At 80 years old, Tom Selleck has finally broken his silence about the man who shaped him more than any role, more than any moment of fame. For decades he carried this truth quietly, letting his work speak. His family life remained steady, and his career moved from one defining character to another. But behind the mustache, the Hawaiian shirts, the ranch in California, and the image of Hollywood's most enduring leading man, there was always James Garner. To millions, Garner was Maverick Rockford, the everyman hero with a sly grin and an unshakable sense of decency. To Selleck, he was something far more personal. He was the mentor who set the standard for how to carry fame without arrogance, how to treat people without pretense, and how to choose family over the endless chase for stardom. But why did Selleck wait until now to finally speak so openly about Garner? What lessons did he learn from the man he once idolized as a boy? And why does Selleck believe, even after decades of success, that he is still trying to live up to the example James Garner set? Tom Selleck's story did not begin on a set in Hollywood, but in Detroit, Michigan, where he was born Thomas William Selleck in 1945. His parents soon moved west, settling in Sherman Oaks, California, in the post-war years when the suburbs promised stability and opportunity. What defined him in those early years wasn't acting, it was discipline. He grew up chasing basketballs across school gyms, training hard enough to earn a scholarship to the University of Southern California. Sports, not the screen, seemed to be his future. At USC, Selleck studied business administration while suiting up for the Trojans. Acting was nowhere on the horizon. Yet fate often waits in the margins, and one drama coach saw something in Selleck that he himself could not. A few acting classes led to commercials, and before long his face was turning up on televisions across America in campaigns like Pepsi's glossy ads of the 1960s. The tall frame, the easy smile, the rugged presence, it was all there, even if Selleck still thought of himself as an athlete dabbling on the side. Hollywood, however, has a way of pulling people in slowly, almost without their consent. Guest appearances began to stack up, small roles on game shows, quick turns in TV dramas. They were not glamorous jobs, but they were lessons. Selleck was learning how to work under lights, how to carry himself in front of a camera, and most importantly, how to survive rejection. By the late 1970s, he had weathered dozens of near misses, including screen tests for major films that slipped through his fingers. The most famous loss came years later, when he was forced to decline Indiana Jones because of scheduling conflicts. And yet, in these years of frustration, something else was taking root, a connection that would prove more valuable than any role. On the set of the Rockford Files, Selleck crossed paths with James Garner. It wasn't a starring role, he was simply one of many young actors cycling through guest appearances. But the impression it left on Selleck was immediate. Garner carried himself differently. He wasn't brash or condescending. He wasn't the kind of star who reminded everyone of his fame. Instead, he was approachable, kind and quietly commanding, a man whose presence lingered longer than the cameras rolled. For Selleck, still struggling to break into the business, that first glimpse of Garner offered something more than inspiration. It offered a model for survival, because in Hollywood, charisma might open doors, but character kept them from slamming shut. And that raises a question: when success finally came for Tom Selleck, would he live by the same example, or would fame push him down a very different path? When the call finally came in 1980, it didn't just change Tom Selleck's career, it rewrote his life. CBS handed him the role of Thomas Magnum, a private investigator in Hawaii, whose Ferrari charm and unshakable confidence would define an entire decade of television. Overnight, Selleck became more than an actor. He was a symbol. The mustache, the Hawaiian shirts, the sly grin, all of it fused into an image that fans carried with them far beyond the show's 8-season run. But what made Magnum P.I endure wasn't just style. It was Selleck's ability to balance toughness with vulnerability, wit with humanity. Audiences didn't just watch Magnum solve mysteries, they felt his struggles, his humor, his quiet moments of doubt. That blend turned a detective drama into something deeper, and by the mid-80s, Selleck was one of television's most recognizable faces. Awards followed, an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and with them came the kind of fame that can either cement a career or consume it. For Selleck, the pressure was immense. He was suddenly on magazine covers, fielding film offers, and navigating a public hungry to know everything about him. Many stars in his position had crumbled under the weight of expectation. But Selleck had already seen what happened when success was allowed to swallow a person whole. From the sidelines of the Rockford Files, he had watched James Garner carry fame differently, with humility, humor, and balance. And now, in the middle of his own whirlwind, those lessons mattered more than ever. Selleck later admitted he was nervous the first time he worked closely with Garner on a Rockford movie special during the height of Magnum P.I. What would it be like to share scenes with someone he had admired for so long? Would Garner treat him as an equal, or remind him who the true veteran was? Instead, Garner greeted him with warmth. He laughed easily, encouraged Selleck, and, more importantly, treated every crew member with the same respect he gave the producers. It was a revelation. That memory stayed with Selleck throughout the peak of his fame. While the cameras painted him as the ultimate cool detective, behind the scenes he was quietly asking himself a different question: how do you stay grounded when the world is telling you that you're larger than life? The answer, at least in part, came from Garner's example. He showed Selleck that real strength in Hollywood wasn't about star power, it was about humanity. But how would Selleck prove that lesson in the years after Magnum, when the roles changed, the spotlight shifted, and his career had to evolve all over again? When Magnum P.I. ended in 1988, many expected Tom Selleck to fade into the long list of actors forever tied to one role, but he refused to be a relic of the 80s. Instead, he made a move that stunned critics. He pivoted from rugged television detective to comedic leading man. In 1987, Three Men and a Baby stormed the box office, becoming the year's highest-grossing film. For audiences, it was a shock. Selleck wasn't hiding behind a gun or a Ferrari. He was juggling diapers, cracking jokes, and showing a warmth that proved he was more than a TV hero. The film's success gave him breathing room. He could have chased action blockbusters, but instead he spread his career across genres. He leaned into westerns with Quigley Down Under in 1990, a film that let him step into a tradition he had loved since childhood. He returned to drama in An Innocent Man, tested lighter romance in Her Alibi, and slowly built a resume that said one thing clearly: he was versatile. He wasn't just a mustache and a smile, he was an actor with range. Yet even as he reinvented himself, Selleck carried Garner's lessons in the background. Garner had thrived by never boxing himself into a single identity, switching from Maverick's charm to Rockford's grit, from comedy to drama without apology. Selleck was following a similar path, proving longevity didn't come from clinging to one role but from adapting without losing integrity. The proof came decades later with Blue Bloods. Starting in 2010, Selleck took on the role of Frank Reagan, the stoic head of a New York law enforcement family. It was a part that demanded gravity, wisdom, and authority, qualities Selleck now brought naturally with age. The show quietly grew into one of CBS's longest-running hits, anchoring Friday nights for more than a decade. Critics praised the nuance of his performance, but fans responded most to the family dynamic, the dinner table scenes where Selleck's Reagan guided his children with both firmness and compassion. In those moments, the line from Garner to Selleck was unmistakable. Garner had shown that television wasn't about posing, it was about authenticity. Selleck, now decades into his career, was doing the same. Still, career choices were only one part of the story. Fame may be managed on set, but real legacy is shaped at home. And in the years after Magnum, Selleck would make choices in his personal life that revealed just how deeply Garner's influence had taken root. Which leads to a new question when the cameras were off. How did Tom Selleck live? And what sacrifices did he make to ensure Hollywood never consumed his family? Away from the cameras, Tom Selleck's life looked very different from the red carpets and magazine covers that defined so many of his peers. In 1971, he married model Jacqueline Ray. The marriage lasted just over a decade. But in that time, Selleck made one of the most defining choices of his life. He legally adopted Jacqueline's son Kevin, giving him stability and the family name. That decision revealed something essential about Selleck. He valued responsibility over image. Kevin would later find his own place in the world as a drummer for the rock band Tonic, but the foundation was laid by a stepfather who chose to stand in rather than step aside. After the divorce, Selleck's path crossed with Gilly Mack, a British actress and dancer he met in London after watching her perform in Cats. What began as a chance encounter became the partnership that would anchor his adult life. They married in 1987, keeping the ceremony intentionally private, and a year later welcomed their daughter Hannah. Unlike many children of Hollywood stars, Hannah charted her own course, devoting herself to equestrian sports and becoming a respected competitor on the international stage. The Sellecks settled on a 60-acre ranch in Hidden Valley, California, once owned by Dean Martin. There, Tom embraced the life of a working rancher. He cleared brush, repaired roads, and tended avocado groves with the same dedication he once gave to scripts and sets. He often admitted he hated gyms, but he loved sweating under the sun with dirt on his hands. It wasn't about escaping fame, it was about grounding himself in something real. That decision to step back from Hollywood's relentless grind was not made in a vacuum. James Garner had shown him another path. Garner's long, steady marriage to Lois Clark proved that stability in the entertainment world was possible. Garner had chosen his family over the endless chase for stardom, and Selleck absorbed that lesson. At the height of Magnum P.I.'s popularity, he made the startling choice to walk away. He wanted more time with Gilly and Hannah, and the ranch gave him that. For some, it seemed unthinkable. Why would a man at the peak of his fame retreat into the countryside? For Selleck, the answer was simple. Fame could be lost, but family was forever. And that belief traced back to Garner's influence, the example of a man who proved you could be both a star and a devoted husband, both admired on screen and respected at home. But as Selleck now admits at 80, Garner gave him more than family values. He gave him a standard, a way of moving through Hollywood with humility and strength. And the truth Selleck finally tells reveals just how much he still measures himself against that standard. By the time Tom Selleck reached 80, he had carried Garner's influence with him for more than half a century. Yet he rarely spoke of it openly. He feared that words might diminish the gratitude he felt, that no sentence could capture the depth of what James Garner gave him. Now, with decades of perspective behind him, he has finally admitted the truth. As a boy, Selleck had watched Maverick. Garner's easy charisma stood apart from the brooding cowboys of the 1950s. He wasn't trying to look tough, he simply was, in a way that felt effortless and real. That authenticity stayed in Selleck's mind long before the two men ever met. When they finally worked together, first in the Rockford Files and later in made-for-TV projects, Selleck discovered something remarkable. Garner's on-screen humanity wasn't an act. He was the same off-camera, warm, funny, and unfailingly kind. Selleck recalls how Garner treated everyone on set with the same respect, from producers to crew members hauling cables. Jim didn't have a phony bone in his body. He would later confess, that lesson hit harder than any acting class. Fame, Selleck realized, wasn't a license to stand above others, it was a responsibility to stand with them. The mentorship went deeper than set etiquette. Garner became a quiet compass during long conversations between takes. He warned Selleck of the traps that destroy careers, ego, entitlement, and the endless hunger for more. He urged him never to trade integrity for applause. He reminded him that the work mattered, but the person you were when the lights shut off mattered more. For a man navigating the pressures of sudden stardom, those words became lifelines. What struck Selleck most, however, was Garner's balance. Here was a television icon who never let success eclipse family. His marriage to Lois Clark endured in a world where most celebrity unions collapsed. He showed that it was possible to be both admired by millions and devoted to one. For Selleck, who would later step away from Magnum P.I. at the peak of its fame to focus on Jilly and Hannah, that choice was no coincidence. Garner had shown him that love and stability were not weaknesses, they were victories. Looking back now, Selleck admits his own legacy is inseparable from Garner's. The humor, the humility, the humanity, all of it echoes through the way he carried himself over the decades. And in finally speaking the words aloud, he makes no attempt to soften the truth. "I owe him more than I can ever repay," Selleck confesses. "James Garner set the standard for everything I've tried to be. Even now, I'm still trying to live up to it." Which leaves the question hanging for us: when the standard is set by someone as rare as James Garner, can anyone, even Tom Selleck, ever truly reach it? Tom Selleck's career has stretched across 6 decades, from a young athlete who stumbled into acting, to a television detective who defined the 80s, to the steady patriarch who still anchors Friday nights. But beneath all the roles, all the awards, and all the years on screen, there runs a thread that ties him back to one man: James Garner. It wasn't just mentorship, it was a blueprint for survival in an industry that devours its own. Garner showed Selleck that success meant nothing if it cost you your character. He proved that a family could outlast fame, that kindness could outshine ego, and that authenticity mattered more than any script. For Tom Selleck, those lessons became more than advice. They became the foundation of his life. At 80, he has finally spoken the words he long carried in silence. His achievements, his choices, even his devotion to family, are all marked by Garner's influence. The truth is simple, and yet profound. Tom Selleck's story cannot be told without James Garner's shadow falling across it. And so the question is no longer about Selleck's fame or Garner's legacy, but about what endures when the lights fade. For both men, the answer was never celebrity, it was integrity, it was family, it was friendship. For Selleck, the truth is clear: his greatest role may not be Magnum, or Reagan, or any character at all. It may be the role of a man who lived up to the standard James Garner set, and who continues even now to try. For more emotional stories, check out this video.